"Look, you're just not cut out for this," my boss, Chris, said coldly. The others pretended not to notice. "Make sure you collect the payment properly. Besides, it's not fun being around you." I had gone to a problematic client to urge and confirm payment since they were behind, but ended up returning after being begged, "Please, we'll pay next month." This troublesome client who never keeps promises was actually Chris's account. He forcefully pushed this annoying customer onto me. "You may be earnest, but you're not savvy. You're not suited for this industry," Chris sneered. I could hear the mocking laughter of my coworkers. There was no life for me there. Eventually, I quit the company I had worked at for 6 years and decided to return to my hometown. I'm Mike. I'm 28 and jobless. I moved from a small town to the city after going from high school to university steadily, landing a job at a major company's branch office. Despite achieving fair success as a promising newcomer in the glamorous city, I ended up being envied and begrudged by seniors, colleagues, and bosses. "Mike is getting too cocky," they would whisper, ultimately leading to my resignation. After the holidays, I packed my bags, and on the train ride home, I sighed, wondering how to break the news to my parents. But they welcomed me back without a word of reproach. It was a long-awaited return to my childhood home. I decided to take it easy at my parents' house for a while. Settling back into my old room, I was reminded of my student days. My family has run a general store in the shopping district for generations. Everyone in the district knows our shop. From birth, I was cherished by the adults in the neighborhood. And both my parents and the residents loved the local festivals. My grandfather and father were drummers in the festival music band, indispensable to the summer festivities. From a young age, my father taught me how to play the drums, and before I knew it, I was part of the ensemble. Maybe it's in the blood. The sound of the drums stirs my soul. I eagerly participated in the practices. The adults in the community would say, "A festival isn't complete without Mike's drumming." I would practice with the adults several times a week, not just for our neighborhood festival, but also performing at events in neighboring towns. The sound of the drums lifted everyone's spirits. In school, I was a well-liked figure with many friends. But children's interests are fickle. As my classmates' interest in drumming waned, and I hung out mostly with adults, friends gradually drifted away. Even after starting middle school, I continued to engage in drum practice, which, unbeknownst to my peers, made me the subject of odd looks. By this age, a so-called social hierarchy forms in class. Ken, a handsome soccer player, reigned at the top. His father was a well-known company president, wealthy, with excellent grades, and popular among the girls. Fans from other schools would even come to watch his soccer practice. I joined the newspaper club and spent my free days drumming. Not from a wealthy home and with only average grades, I found myself ranked low in the social order and became a target for Ken's teasing. Do you actually enjoy life, drumming with old folks? That drumming is essential for our community events. Come listen sometime, it'll cheer you up. Community events, how lame. Ken and his entourage would burst into laughter. Being in an inconspicuous club and mostly involved with community events, I was ridiculed as uncool and too serious, eventually being treated like a contagion, as if hanging with Mike will make you old. I took out all that frustration on the drums. Unfortunately, I was in the same class with Ken until the 3rd year of middle school. While I was fed up, I can't forget the opening ceremony that year. Into our unchanging class came a new student. The transfer student, Emily, appeared to be the daughter of a major company executive, petite but well-mannered, with fair skin and long black hair that caught everyone's eye. She quickly became the object of admiration from both boys and girls in the class. Surprisingly, Emily ended up sitting next to me. "Mike, nice to meet you." I remember her talking to me in a quiet, bell-like voice. "Nice to meet you too," Let me know if you need any help." Normally, I wouldn't say such a thing, but for some reason, I blurted out a line that didn't sound like me. However, I felt that Emily seemed a little relieved to hear it. But after school, Ken and his followers would confront me with nonsensical accusations like, "Don't get cocky," and "Don't you dare do anything weird to Emily." I thought it was unnecessary to go that far just because I sat next to the class beauty, but after every class, I was forcibly shooed away from my seat with a mic, "You're in the way," as the whole class flocked around Emily. Emily seemed to have after-school activities, as she often went home right after class. One day, the community association received a request for a drum performance at a foster home, and I left school earlier than usual for the meeting. On my way home, I stumbled upon Emily. Even though we sat next to each other, we had never really talked, but I found myself calling out, "Emily." She turned around in surprise. "Hey, Emily, are you going to your after-school activity today?" I asked nervously, and she replied with a sigh, "Yes, I have lessons again today. It's violin lessons today. I like it better than studying, though." "Violin? Huh, that's cool. I've been learning the drums since I was a kid." I immediately regretted my words. I was thinking that community drumming couldn't be compared to her violin. But Emily's eyes widened with interest. "Are you talking about taiko drums?" "Yay, that's right. I play with the guys from the community association during festivals and stuff." "Well, that's amazing. I'd love to see that." Her unexpected response left me dumbfounded. Seizing the moment, I gathered my courage and invited her. "I'm playing at the summer festival, so if you're free, you should come." "Okay, it's a promise," Emily replied with a smile. I could feel my face flushing with heat. "Oh no, I've got to go. Let's both do our best, okay?" I watched her smiling face as she left, and I kept replaying that moment in my mind even after I got home. At school, our interactions remained the same, but sometimes she would say, "Is practice going well?" or "I'm looking forward to the festival." It was as if we shared a secret just between us, and that alone made me happy. Meanwhile, in class, Ken's entourage was pushing the idea that Ken and Emily would make such a perfect couple. Ken and Emily. Sure, they are both attractive, and maybe they would be a good match. But still, I felt an uncomfortable fog settling over my heart. Ken was getting pumped up, saying he would ask Emily out. He told his groupies to invite Emily to come watch his next soccer game for support. It looked like he was using other girls to make sure she would come. Emily initially declined, saying I'd have lessons on that day. But after persuasion from everyone, she agreed to go and support the game. This bothered me, and I became restless. But the day before the practice match, Emily said to me, "Good luck with your practice. I'm really looking forward to the festival." Boys being simple creatures, just that made my heart soar. I heard after the break that Ken's team had a big win in the soccer game, thanks to his performance. But something was off in the classroom that morning. Both Ken and Emily were silent. During the break, the girls crowded around Emily. "Come on, you've got to respond to Ken's feelings. What's wrong with Ken? He's so cool." Apparently, Ken had asked Emily out in front of everyone after the game. But Emily didn't respond and just went home. Cut it out, guys. Emily's just bewildered by the sudden move. Unexpectedly, it was Ken who intervened. However, his forced smile suggested that his pride had been wounded and he was trying to hide his desperation. From that day on, Emily became quieter and stopped talking to me. Then came the last day of the semester. "Good luck with the drumming. I'm rooting for you." After the ceremony, as I was about to leave, Emily spoke to me with her usual smile. But that was the last thing she said to me. She didn't come back for the start of the next semester. Our teacher said that Emily had transferred again due to her dad's work. I never got the chance to show her my drumming after all. Ken quickly started dating another girl, and Emily was gradually forgotten by the class. Years later, I found myself thinking about Emily again. She was someone I couldn't forget. Maybe my first love. But as an unemployed guy, I couldn't afford to dwell on memories. I decided to take a break at home and look for a job. It didn't take long for the community association folks to find out I was back, and the neighbors, who had aged quite a bit, came by to say hello. "Hey, Mike, you got some free time now, right? How about hitting the drums again? You're back for a reason. Let's play together." The community drumming had continued even after I'd left for a job, and it seemed they were often invited to perform at festivals and events. There was a performance at the community center coming up, and everyone was asking if I would join. I hesitated at first, but remembering Emily, I decided to go to practice. Mom and Dad encouraged me, saying have fun. After years of not playing, I was plagued by muscle pain, but my skills hadn't faded. The kids still got it, the community members said, satisfied. The performance at the community center attracted a big crowd. When we started playing, I could feel the audience being drawn in. At 28, I was the youngest, but the other members' skills hadn't declined at all. When I struck the final beat, the applause was thunderous. I felt elated by the performance. "Your playing was terrific." An elderly woman in a wheelchair approached me after the show. She looked very dignified with glasses. "Your performance gave me such energy. Feels like my injured leg will heal faster now." "Thank you, it's great to hear that," I said. "When's the next show? I'll definitely come to watch." "Well, I'm actually job hunting right now, so I'm not sure when I'll play again." I found myself sharing more than I expected. "You better find a job fast. I want to hear you play again. What kind of company would fire someone like you?" She was inquisitive, but I didn't mind and ended up chatting with her for a while. "You're 28, that's the same age as my granddaughter. She was just here," but just as she was about to continue, the community folks called out, "Mike, help us clean up, will ya? Thank you for today. Hopefully, we'll meet again if fate allows it." As I joined to clean up, I saw a young woman coming to pick up the elderly lady. "Hurry up, don't want to overstay our welcome." I was rushed to help with the cleanup, and soon the two ladies were out of sight. My drumming had the power to energize others. The words of that woman made me feel glad I had continued playing drums. A few days later, "Mike, there's a class reunion invite. What are you gonna do about it?" Apparently, there was a middle school reunion happening soon. There had been a few before, but they always coincided with busy times at work, and I never attended. Well, I was busy, but more than that, I didn't want to see Ken. Why not go for a change of pace? You might even meet someone nice. "Yeah, Mike, you should meet up with friends your own age. You've come all the way back home after all." Persuaded by my parents, I decided to attend the reunion to get a change of scenery. On the day of the reunion, I headed to the hotel that was the venue. It seemed there were other groups using the hotel today as well. Many people were bustling about. I wondered if everyone would remember me. Feeling a bit anxious, I cautiously approached the reception where I was greeted unexpectedly warmly by familiar classmates. "Hey, isn't that Mike? Long time no see. You're back in town. Let's catch up over a drink." Among them were Ken's old entourage, but as adults, they no longer treated me the way they did back then. I was relieved, but that was naive of me. "Our boss is such a jerk," someone griped. "Yeah, the one with a face like a pug," others added. They all complained about work, voicing their daily frustrations. I wasn't the target, but it reminded me of the unpleasant atmosphere of my old company. The women were even bragging about their romantic conquests and affairs. Disgusted, I regretted coming when suddenly, "Ah, Ken, you're late," was shouted, and a cheer went up from the women. Ken entered, dressed in a flashy suit, signaling his grand entrance. "Wow, Mike, it's been ages. I was surprised to hear you'd come." Ken grinned as he approached me. "Hey, long time no see." I replied, trying to brush it off, but Ken slapped my shoulder mockingly. You got fired, didn't you? His loud voice made sure everyone heard, and the mocking laughter of classmates followed. Really? Wow, Mike, that's lame. Why do you know that? I heard from Chris that his company hired some loser. He's a senior from my college. It was a surprise that Ken knew Chris, but their similar vibe made sense. Seen you on social media, still drumming with the old guys. Well, if you've got time for that, you should be job hunting. Ken mocked. My drumming at the local events was all over social media. To my classmates, it seemed ridiculous, and they snickered. I was about to leave, annoyed, when something cold splashed on my face. Ken had thrown his beer at me, eliciting more laughter. Hey, don't ignore me. You're still boring as ever. That's why you don't have a girlfriend. A jobless single guy. You are pretty much done for. The crowd laughed even harder. I wiped my face with a handkerchief, feeling miserable. What a mess. Typical you. Emily's coming today, you know. Emily. My heart raced and my face felt hot at the mention of her name. Oh my God, that Emily is going to come. All the memories came flooding back. But I was too miserable, wet from the beer, wanting to disappear. I wonder if Emily's still single. She must have a handsome boyfriend by now. The classmates speculated, but then someone shouted, "Here comes Emily." There she was, after several years. Her long black hair flowing, her fair skin, and her firm lips. I was in awe, even as I wiped the beer from my face. Hey, you're here to see me, right? Ken joked, reaching out to her. But she brushed his hand aside and strode straight toward me. Emily took out a white handkerchief and began wiping my face, and I heard bewildered voices from the people around me. Stop it, you'll get dirty. What's the big deal? Mike is my boyfriend, Emily declared. I was as surprised as everyone else. What? While Ken frowned unhappily. Come on, knock off the bad jokes. Don't associate with this loser. Ken raised his voice in annoyance. Go have tea with the old men. You're an eyesore. Get lost. As he said this, he tried to separate me and Emily. Come on, let's go have a drink, Ken said, trying to pull Emily away forcibly. Ken, there's someone I'd like to introduce you to, Emily said, shaking off his hand. What? Are your parents here? That's troublesome. Ken smirked. It was then that a familiar female voice interjected, Ken, you seem quite full of yourself. The owner of the voice was an elegant elderly woman in a business suit. It was the same woman who had come to watch the drum performance in a wheelchair. But today she stood on her own feet. It seemed her injury had healed. I was confused about why she was there. Mrs. Smith, why are you here? Ken froze in surprise. It appeared that Mrs. Smith was someone Ken couldn't stand up to. We're having a company anniversary party in the back room, but when I heard you were here, I thought I'd pop by. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. What a terrible oversight, Ken said, but still held onto Emily's hand. Ken, would you mind letting go of my granddaughter's hand now? Your granddaughter, I exclaimed. Emily was the granddaughter of Mrs. Smith. Ken, his face sweaty with panic, finally let go of Emily's hand. You're as selfish and arrogant as ever. You always had to act the part at work, but I had no idea you were like this in real life. It's a misunderstanding. I just wanted to make everyone laugh and cheer them up. Like that excuse will fly. I think I'll have to reconsider our company's dealings with yours. Ken, that's lame. The cronies started among Ken's entourage as Mrs. Smith and Emily looked at me intently. Your drumming really touched my heart. It healed my injury so quickly. That's what it means to uplift people. I saw that performance too. It turns out Emily had been at the venue too and had heard my performance. I had left to help with the cleanup, but at that moment, it was Emily who had come to pick up Mrs. Smith. I always regretted moving suddenly in middle school and not being able to hear your drumming at the festival. but I guess fate works in mysterious ways." Emily smiled, probably the brightest smile I'd ever seen from her. Ken, having lost his earlier bravado, mumbled an excuse about having something to do and left the reunion hastily. His cornies soon followed suit, and the reunion quickly wound down. "Emily, talk more with him. Don't be so quiet like you used to. It won't do," Mrs. Smith advised. Mrs. Smith gave Emily a gentle push on the back and then headed to her own company's party venue. Emily and I made eye contact. Since we're here, do you want to grab a drink?" I was nervous and couldn't keep eye contact, but Emily nodded happily. We then talked about the times when we were students. When she transferred to our school, Emily was worried about fitting in. The social hierarchy was already in place, and she couldn't feel at ease in that oppressive space, but she felt a sense of security with me, who was always calm and had a peaceful aura. That day at the community center, I really wanted to talk to you, but it had been so long, I didn't know what to say, and before I knew it, I couldn't find the words, but I thought maybe I'd see you at the reunion, so I decided to go. "I'm glad I got to see you, Mike, but sorry for lying about being your girlfriend." She apologized, but honestly, what man would be upset by such a claim? All I could do was respond with an awkward laugh. Emily had moved back to town this year to help with her grandmother, Mrs. Smith's company. "Grandma keeps saying her injury healed thanks to your drumming. When I told her you were my classmate, she insisted I bring you along, and actually, the company is hiring now. Would you like to try out for an interview?" "Me? Really? Just a referral. But don't say just me. You should have more confidence, especially with how wonderfully you play." Emily encouraged me. After a few days of consideration, I decided to interview with Mrs. Smith's company. I got the job and spent several months training at another branch out of state. This company didn't have anyone like Chris or Ken, and when I met Mrs. Smith again at headquarters, she gave me her full approval. "You look good. I'm counting on you from now on." Emily and I ended up in different departments, but she often makes time to see me, and we spend our breaks together. Take good care of both your work and Emily. Thanks to you, she's been smiling more lately, and let us hear your drumming again. I'm looking forward to the next time. Mrs. Smith would jest. The drumming I've done since childhood has brought this connection. It always gives me energy and strength. And whenever I think of Emily, my heart pounds like the beat of a drum. I haven't been able to share my feelings with her yet, but one day, I hope to convey them properly. Phew, there's still so much left over. My name is James. As I looked at the convenience store ready meals that were about to be discarded, I sighed. Even though they were past their expiration date, it seemed such a waste to throw away so many meals. I knew the value of food, that's why I thought it was such a pity. By the way, I wonder how that girl is doing. While staring at the ready meals destined for the trash, I was reminded of something. My family runs a convenience store. But when I was little, I often felt bad about it. In elementary school, there were days when we didn't have school lunch and had to bring our own packed lunch. Mine was always from the convenience store. "James, doesn't your family make you a packed lunch?" My mom says it's a waste to throw away the unsold ready meals, so this is fine. Unsold? You mean like the ready meals that are going to be trash? That's kinda harsh of your mom, isn't it? It might be hard to imagine now, but back then, on days when we needed a packed lunch, my parents would have me take one that was meant to be discarded. Other kids might buy their lunch at a convenience store if their parents were busy, but no one else's parents sent them with a ready meal that was going to be thrown out. That's why I felt ashamed of eating those ready meals and sometimes secretly threw them away. What are you doing? That's such a waste. If you're not going to eat it, give it to me. A girl in my class once said that to me. I wonder if that girl is doing well. As I took the unsold ready meals to the trash area behind the store, I muttered to myself, "Are you going to throw away that ready meal? What a waste." Suddenly, I heard a voice from behind me. When I turned around, there was a woman without a hint of makeup, smiling at me. I wonder, who is this person? I feel like I've met her somewhere before. Excuse me, you are. Sorry for speaking to you so suddenly. I was just feeling nostalgic when I saw this convenience store still here. I used to be taken care of by the son of this place when I was little. Could it be Kayla? Her name was Kayla. She was known in school for never bringing her own packed lunch. Her lunch was either made by a teacher or she would get some side dishes from someone else in the class. Could it be James? When I called her by her name, she suddenly brightened up. That's right, James. Now I'm running this convenience store as the owner. Really? How are your mom and dad? They're doing well. Now they're taking it easy and leaving the store to me. It's nice to hear that. Everyone seems to be doing well. I'm so happy to have seen you after such a long time. I'll come by again if I have the chance. With that, she was about to leave. Hold on a sec. You came here for me, didn't you? I found myself calling out to her reflexively. Hey, you're eating 3 meals a day now, right? Yeah. Her voice was weak as she looked down, perhaps indicating something was amiss. I wonder if something happened. I thought it might be better to steer the conversation elsewhere for the moment, so I changed the subject. So, what are you up to these days? Oh, now, I'm a CEO. Pretty cool, huh? It's tough because I'm barely paying myself a salary due to the red ink. But hey, wait, Kayla, you're a CEO. Yep, that's right. Started last year, I set up my own web design firm. Now I'm employing some friends who are web designers, and we're really trying to make it work. Wow, that's impressive, being a CEO and all. It's no joke, she said, pulling a business card from her bag and showing it to me. There it was, her name with the title CEO beside the company name. You've come a long way despite the hard times at home. I couldn't help but admire how far she'd come. Yeah, after my dad got sick and couldn't work much, and we couldn't even afford lunches, life was tough. If only Mom hadn't blown our money on slots, we might have had some breathing room. That brings back memories. The days of bringing packed lunch to school. I used to bring her share as well. This lunch is so good. Seeing her smile as she said that made me gradually stop resenting the discarded lunches my parents sent me with. I believe they had the sentiment of not wanting to waste, which is why they gave me those lunches. From a hygiene and business standpoint, it wasn't praiseworthy, and of course, now, taking home discarded food is not allowed. Those meals are past the sell-by date, set to prevent food poisoning. You can't just hand out discarded meals lightly. Back in my elementary school days, regulations were more relaxed, and bringing such meals to school wasn't an issue. Doing the same today would probably cause a stir at the school. Are your mom and dad doing okay? Suddenly, I found myself concerned about her family situation. I remember her father being frail and unable to work, but doing what he could around the house. The problem was her mother. She rarely took care of the kids, always off playing slots, as I'd often heard Kayla complain. I'd been to her house in public housing, and it was always her dad who welcomed me. I never saw her mom. I do catch up with Dad now and then, she answered in a somber tone. Her words easily led me to imagine that she'd had her share of trouble since then. Why did you come here? I'm not sure. I didn't particularly want to see anyone or anything. Her voice trembled slightly. Could you wait for just a bit? I think I can make some time to talk, maybe 10 minutes. After that, I decided to take Kayla to the back and listen to her story. Really sorry to bother you during work hours. Actually, my mom started showing up at my company recently. In the back, she began to speak in bits and pieces. Her mother had left home without a word when Kayla was in middle school. There had been no contact since then, and just as she'd almost forgotten, her mom showed up unexpectedly in front of her company. I asked her where she'd been all this time in a panic. Then she tells me to sign for a loan for her and to support her. That's rough. Of course, I refused, But since then she's been showing up every day. I just don't know what to do. I found myself groaning at her words. This wasn't going to be an easy problem to fix. Did you talk to the police? They said since there's no criminal activity, they can't really do anything. I see. I fell silent at her response. I wanted to help her somehow, but it seemed like there was nothing I could do. That's why I came to ask for a favor. A favor? I started to think if there was anything I could do. Would you mind watching over me while I drive my mother away? What? I could understand her wanting to drive her mother away, but why did I need to be there? I mean, I don't think you need me for that. I just need some courage. That's why I want you by my side. She clasped her hands tightly and looked down. Seeing her like that, I couldn't help but say, "All right, if just being there helps, I'll do it." "Thank you." Her face lit up with a smile. That smile made my heart skip a beat. A few days later, I was standing in front of her house. Though we were both in our early 30s, she owned a whole building, using it as both her home and office. I knew she had gone to a reasonably well-known university after graduating from a local high school, but I never imagined she would become such an accomplished woman. Yet here she was, her hard-earned present being threatened by her own mother. She was trying to change that situation with her own hands. "Look, that's my mother." She pointed towards a female figure in front of the building. There indeed was an elderly woman who bore a slight resemblance to her. "Please, stay here." With that, she approached the woman. Then the woman, with a grin on her face, said something unbelievable. "Today's the day you'll pay me my living expenses, Kayla. You do have a duty to take care of me, don't you? You're my daughter, after all. Come on, because of you, Kayla couldn't even bring a packed lunch to school, and now you expect her to take care of you. What's that about?" As my inner voice grew louder, I heard her speak. "I'm sorry, but I don't consider you my parent anymore. Please, stop following me around." "Oh, you think you can say that to me? I could always ask someone scarier than me to come ask you." Seeing the woman's sly grin sent a chill down my spine. But Kayla stood her ground and retorted, "I'm not the child anymore, the one you stole Dad's money from. I'm an independent adult now, so I'd appreciate it if you'd stop involving yourself in my life. I've already consulted a lawyer about this, and I'm well aware of where you've been borrowing money from. I could easily tell the debt collectors where you are." "What? You're threatening me?" The mother raised her voice in anger, but Kayla continued, "This is a proposal. If you stay away from me, you can live peacefully. What do you say?" She held her mother's gaze and went on. "I've also met a few people who say you've run off with their money. Would you like me to tell them where you are too? How did you get that kind of information? I'm not just a child who obeys you anymore. Don't underestimate me." "What? You're getting too big for your boots." Her mother glared at her and spat out those words. But thinking better of it, she quickly left the scene. She had won. The moment I saw that scene, I was certain of it. But in the next instant, for some reason, her mother turned around and swung her arm high. Her eyes widened. At that moment, my body moved on its own. I grabbed the arm that was about to slap her cheek and glared at her mother. "Hey, what do you think you're doing? Just a friend of hers. Go ahead, hate her if you want, but I'll be calling the cops then, okay? Ach, do whatever you want." Her mother shook off my hand and fled the scene as if running away. "Kayla, are you all right?" I rushed over to Kayla, who was behind me. She stood there dumbfounded. "Yeah, I'm fine," and she gave me a deflated reply. Afterward, she took me to a nearby restaurant. She wanted to treat me to a meal as a thank you. "I never thought I'd be protected by you. Sorry, I just acted without thinking." "No, I'm just thinking. This is the second time you've protected me." "Was there another time before?" "Yeah, I was so embarrassed that I couldn't bring a packed lunch to school, but then you started bringing an extra lunch for me, and I was truly grateful. I didn't have to rely on teachers or anyone else anymore. Really, I was so thankful to you back then, James. Nah, I just did what I could. Yeah, you always said that whenever I thanked you. Remembering those words, that's why I was able to stand up to my mom today. Kayla, I never imagined that the lunches I shared with her back then gave her such courage. Hey, do you think we could meet up once in a while? I feel like I could become stronger if I'm around you. Of course, I'm there for you anytime. I smiled in response to her words. And there's one more thing I want to ask you. What is it? At my workplace, we've been passing on food that people have at home, stuff that's close to expiration, to a kid's kitchen run by an acquaintance. If you could. Yeah, of course, I'll help. I've got things like instant noodles and ready-to-eat meals stocked up. I'll ask my folks about it when I get home. Maybe even talk to the deli about it. Really, that make me so happy. Throwing away leftovers is a waste, not just in terms of effort, but money for the store too. Personally, I hate waste, because, you know, it's just too wasteful, right? We inadvertently looked at each other and laughed. That evening, when I got home and told my parents about Kayla, my mom said, "That girl has really grown up, becoming quite the businesswoman now." It does feel pretty good. They both remember the lunch issue from when I was in elementary school. Our family store being independently owned and all, it's always been hard to just throw away food. We were never giving out food that was days old or anything. My parents seemed pleased as they talked. I think Kayla understands better than anyone the pain of not being able to eat. That's probably why she started doing what she does. I want to help too. I was thinking of using our store as a collection point to gather food from neighbors that they can't finish and donate it. That's a nice idea, as long as it's unopened and can be stored at room temperature, I guess. She's really turned out to be a responsible young woman. Bring her over again sometime. I will. We've got some meetings and stuff to discuss anyway. Later, Kayla showed up all dolled up and in a sharp suit, and she bowed deeply to my parents, saying, "Thank you so much for everything. Wow, you've turned into such a beautiful young lady. We're delighted. I grew up on the meals from here, so it's probably thanks to that. My dad sends his regards to you too. How is your father doing? He's been able to get out more on my days off recently. Someday, he wants to come over and thank you properly," Kayla said while handing over a box of pastries to my mom. And just like that, our family reconnected with her after several decades. A few times a week, we deliver food collected from neighbors, and the support for the children's diner was greatly appreciated by the working moms holding down the fort at home. One day, Kayla said with deep emotion, "The reason I want to contribute to the children and their mothers is that you and your family helped me out back then. I'm so glad to be able to support families where the moms are working hard to help reduce the number of kids going hungry." I gently hugged her shoulder as she spoke, a hint of her past struggles in her voice. Our efforts were later featured in the news as a contribution to the community, and eventually, we were both honored by the local government. Now we are working hard together to establish a food bank. We've made a pact to deliver smiles to the children who are suffering from hunger. That's the promise we've made to each other.